Property investing can be such a minefield at times, with so many unknowns to be wary of and so many issues that can crop up along the way. When starting off in property, it can be so easy to become overwhelmed by all the jargon and the terminology that is used within property and all of the stuff that can actually go wrong. It can be hard to actually work out and realise what you're actually looking for in a property and how to spot a good deal from a horrible deal. So what are the red flags then? In this short video, I'm going to be talking about some red flags that you should be looking out for when investing in property and the potential issues that they could cause you. Hi guys, my name is Harley and welcome to the Premium Property YouTube channel where we provide weekly content for beginners in property. If you are new around here, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, and if you do enjoy the video, I'd really appreciate a like so we can get it out there to more young, budding property investors. If the property you're looking at buying is next to a shop or a commercial premises, this can be a huge red flag. Yes, that's right. Just being next to a shop can be a massive red flag for a property. And this is because it's down to lenders and they're often reluctant to lend against these types of properties, especially if the property and the shop is something like a takeaway or a pub where there is likely to be disruptions in the evening, because lenders often view this as a risk and therefore you won't be able to get a mortgage on the property, or it will be unlikely that you're going to be able to get a mortgage on the property. So therefore, if you're buying it with cash, you'll be unable to refinance on the back end after you've refurbished it, and you won't be able to use a mortgage when using it as a buy-to-let and purchasing it as a buy-to-let. So obviously you won't be able to do the BRR model because you won't be able to refinance it at the end, and when doing buy-to-lets you'd have to buy with cash, which means that your return on investment is going to be a lot lower. You also probably wouldn't be able to do a flip. You maybe would if you're going to get a cash buyer in to buy the property at the end, but most of the time a lot of flips are going to be targeted towards first-time buyers, and a lot of first-time buyers obviously use a mortgage to buy the property. So it's unlikely that you'll get a large pool of buyers and therefore won't get the best price for the property on the back end of the flip. It also massively reduces the curb appeal of the property. So this can decrease the rental value because when the agents are going around to value it, they're not going to get that good first impression if it's next to a shop. And also potential people that are looking to rent the property out may not get the best first impression, and therefore you're probably going to get a lower rental value. And the same thing with the GDV. If it's next to that property, it reduces the curb appeal and the valuer may not be as likely to give it a high valuation, and therefore obviously your returns may not be as good as if you base the numbers on properties that were not next to a commercial premises, and therefore you're probably going to get stung and get yourself in a bad deal. So if you do ever come across a property that's close to a commercial premises or a shop, definitely make sure to get in touch with a mortgage broker or a finance broker, because they'll be able to help and they'll know the ins and outs of which properties specifically can be lended on by the lenders. So that's the red flag number one, being next to a shop or a commercial premises. Boarded up properties surrounding your property. You'd think that it was only your property being boarded up that would probably affect the value, but if there is properties that are boarded up either surrounding your property or next door to your property, this can be a massive red flag for a number of reasons. Now, reason number one for that is again down to the lending. Lenders are probably likely to lend on your property if it's next to a boarded up property. It's unlikely that they won't lend. However, it is likely that you may get a lower valuation than you were hoping for, because again, lenders view boarded up properties as a risk because of the curb appeal, and it decreases the value of your property, meaning that you may not get the valuation that you were hoping for. So again, definitely do your due diligence on that. Make sure that there isn't a boarded up property next door, and if it is, again, speak to a broker, see what their experience is with it, and see if there is sort of any chance you could get a lower valuation. If there is, and the deal still stacks when you've lowered the valuation and been conservative, and factor that into your figures, still go ahead with the deal, because there's nothing that's directly going to affect your property, because at the end of the day it is another property that is boarded up, but you've just got to factor the potential lower valuation into your figures. The second reason that boarded up properties around your property are a red flag is if there are multiple boarded up properties in the surrounding area. This can obviously be a sign that the area may be deprived, there may be high crime rates in the area, and therefore this is not a good sign for a buy-to-let property. It's likely that, like I said, there's going to be high crime in the area, so you really don't want your property in an area like that, because the chances are you're going to have a lot of maintenance issues, you're going to have a lot of problems, and you probably may not get the best tenants. So if it is a property with boarded up properties surrounding it and in the surrounding area, I would definitely make sure to call at least 2 or 3 estate agents in the area and just ask about the area. And if the majority of the agents instantly say no, definitely avoid that area, then obviously it's an area to avoid, and just be wary either way. Properties with a short lease, another red flag. Now, for those that don't know, a short lease is usually when the lease is less than 80 years. So there's less than 80 years left on the leasehold of the property. And a leasehold is where typically sort of used on flats, where the owner of the leasehold doesn't actually own the land that the property is built on. That is owned by the freeholder, and then the leaseholder owns the part of the building that is built on that land. And essentially the leasehold gives them the permission to obviously live in the property and treat the property as their own, and essentially like their own home, because at the end of the day they are buying it. This is a red flag because it can dramatically reduce the value of your property for a number of reasons. When the lease expires on your property, the ownership of that property is transferred straight over to the freeholder. So obviously that means as the lease gets shorter, the owner of the leasehold has less and less control of the property, because it's like it's sort of ticking down until they lose that property. So this massively decreases it, because if the property had sort of 50 years, it's unlikely that you're going to get sort of more than 2 or 3 buyers in that property if they're staying there for a long period of time. So that's reason number one. It can obviously affect the value as the lease gets shorter and shorter and the owner has less control. The lease can sometimes be extended on properties. However, it can be really costly, and it can often mean that you'll end up paying more for the property than you actually would have done if you bought a property with a longer lease in place. So you can buy short lease properties, and they're not all sort of red flags all the time, but it's really important to do your due diligence on the properties and work out how much the lease actually costs to extend, how long it's going to take, because it can be a way to add value, and you can actually sort of do flips or pull your money out using this sort of strategy. However, it is obviously really important to make sure that the cost and the time of extending the lease is worth it for the value you're going to be adding and the potential profit you can make. Once again, lending is restricted on this type of property because the lenders view it as a risk, and obviously this is natural because as the sort of length of the lease decreases, so does the value of the property. So if the lenders ever had to repossess the property, then their chances of getting that initial investment they made into the property back gets lower and lower as the lease gets shorter and shorter. So obviously the longer the person is in the property and the longer that lease ticks down, the less chance the lenders have of actually gaining that investment back, because it's just slowly decreasing the value of the property. Having a tree near the property, again, is another red flag, and you may just see a tree next to a property or near a property and think nothing of it. At the end of the day, why would you? It is just a tree. Well, if a tree is relatively close to a property, this can cause massive structural issues and cause cracks in the property that can be incredibly hard to repair. And this is because obviously as the roots of the tree grow and penetrate the ground, they can penetrate the foundations of the property and therefore cause that structural damage. And this again is so important as to why you should do due diligence, because again, you can remove the trees, but a lot of the time you have to go through planning to do this, and this is a long and time consuming process which can cost a lot of money. And it's really important, like I said, to do that due diligence up front so you know exactly how much things are going to cost. Speak to your local planning officer, speak to your local authority, see if you can get the tree removed, see if it's likely you'll be able to get the tree removed, how long planning may take. Also speak to a structural engineer to see if the tree is a good distance from the property, see if they've encountered anything like it before, how much it would cost to remove, how much it would cost to repair, any structural cracks if there is any, or if there's actually any chance that the tree could affect the property or it's completely safe. So again, it comes back to doing your upfront due diligence and speaking to the right people, because there is red flags with property investment, but as long as you go around them and you do the right research and you can actually get the right people in place to help you, a lot of the time they can be navigated. The only real one that can't be is a bad area, which obviously we spoke about earlier. Japanese knotweed is the final red flag, which can be incredibly hard to spot. Japanese knotweed is a plant which has been given bad press and has a reputation for being an intrusive plant. And essentially it can be really hard to spot, especially in the winter, because it's dead and it just looks like a normal twig at times. In the summer, it grows really quickly and it's easy to spot in the summer. So this is where it can be dangerous, because it's said that when it grows quickly, it can potentially intrude into the foundations of the property and therefore affect the structure of the property. Again, this is a red flag because it comes back to lending once again. Now, 9 times out of 10, if a property has Japanese knotweed on or in the garden, it's very unlikely that the lenders are going to lend. They'll be reluctant to lend 9 times out of 10 unless it gets treated. And this is where it gets really expensive and where the cost can add up. So treating it can be very expensive and very time consuming. It can take, I don't know exactly, but I think it can take either a few weeks or a few months to fully get rid of the plant, and it does cost a lot. And obviously this can massively affect your deal that you're looking at, because it's going to increase your costs and your upfront investment, and therefore a deal can be killed all because of one plant. So red flags then. These are just a few of them that I've covered off in this video when investing in property. Comment below if you have had any experiences with these red flags, and if so, has it been a good or a bad experience? Comment below if there's any other red flags that you've experienced and what you've sort of done to deal with them. And yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed the video, guys. If you have, I'd appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you did really enjoy the video and take some value, I'd appreciate it if you could hit that like button. Until next time, we'll see you soon for another piece of premium property content.